It will, yeah, if you're ready for a nap, hold your peace. Don't do one yet. I'll get us out of here a little early, okay? How about that? All right. All right, Matthew chapter 25. We started this last week. We're going to finish up the parable of the 10 virgins and their oil, and then we'll shoot over here to the parable of the talents. The thing about the parable of the talents, I'll just be honest with you, the parable of the talents has been done so much, I really don't have a lot extra to bring to the table. I really don't. I think in the course of my brief existence here on this planet, and many times I've heard of the parable, I've probably heard the parable of the talents done in some way, shape, or form at least 100 times. And I just don't have a whole lot to bring to the table as far as that's concerned. But let's finish up. Let's verse 6 of chapter 25. We know that the 10 virgins have been are there to participate in a wedding feast. Now remember, as we've talked before about the idea of the wedding feast and the feast, they were very closed off affairs. This was not open to everyone. You specifically were invited, and if you were not invited, you weren't welcome. All right. So we know that these women that were being invited, they were there for a particular purpose. They were there for a reason. And because the bridegroom tarried, it became late, and they realized they did not have enough oil. Well, one of the groups, 5 of these young ladies, had brought oil in to spare, and the other ones did not. They had enough that was inside of their lamp, and it was growing low. So they asked the ones that had prepared themselves, give us some of yours. And they said, well, if we give you some, we won't have any for ourselves. Some folks have taken this parable to mean that these young women were responsible for providing the illumination for the wedding feast. It was late, and they were the ones responsible for providing this illumination in the form of their lamps. And because some of them were prepared, some of them were not, you need oil, you need to go and get some because we won't have enough. So they went, and unfortunately, while they were gone, the bridegroom came, they went inside, and then the door was shut. That idea here is that the point behind the whole parable is that when the door is shut, the door will not be open. So we take that to mean a lot of different things, right? Opportunity. We think about opportunity. The whole point of this parable is the idea of preparedness. Preparedness. Always be watching. Well, in that particular point in time, this parable would have meant something to them. They would have understood what this parable was meaning. But, of course, in our day and time, what is the parable telling us to do? Look out, right? Be prepared. Getting back to the old Boy Scout motto, right? Be prepared in all things. In our instance, what are we being prepared for? The coming of the bridegroom. We're being prepared. So, because we know that when he comes, the door will not be opened again. So, it tells us that we have a door of opportunity. There's a particular point in time where it is we are free to enter and we are free to leave, but when that door is shut, the door will not be reopened, as the bridegroom said. He said, I know these people, but I don't know who you are. And the door is not going to be open. So did they miss out? These women that had, they had all arrived with the same hope of a promise. They were all excited. It's ladies in weddings, man. They're excited. It is a very particularly female ceremony. It's a time that it means especially a lot to young women, and they were very excited. And they all arrived with that same hope of promise, but 5 were going to be allowed entry, and 5 were going to be shut out, and they were shut out for good. There was nothing more. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think that there would be some who would adjust themselves accordingly, and then there were some who would tie the door and say, well, I'm just going to go on home. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. That is the way that it is. Well, on this earth we know we can head home, but boy, in the time to come, when that door is shut and we can't get entry, we're going to go to a place, outer darkness. I mean, that's where they were. They were in outer darkness. I had a professor at college that told me the same thing. That when that bell rings, when that final bell rings, on the campus clock, when that final chime, that door is shut and you do not get in. Same thing. Don't even try the doorknob. If you tried to come in, he slammed the door. You knew that door was shut. Don't even bother trying to go to class. Go on back to your dorm room. Try to do better next time. You would find very few people who were not sitting in their desk when that bell rang. Most people got there early. They don't want to take that. You didn't linger in the halls talking. You went immediately to class and sat down. Plenty of time to talk after that. But what's that? Yeah, you'd probably have a lawsuit today. You'd probably have somebody complaining that they were being ugly. And yeah. Of course, this was a private school. He could do whatever he wanted to do, and people were, it got to the point where it was a badge of honor to not make it because it was such a big deal. So anyhow, that whole process, that whole thought process though, is the idea of being prepared. Now we think about it, and remember in the parables we don't look at every single thing and try to make it mean. Try to assign a meaning to every single little thing. The idea of a lamp doesn't necessarily mean anything. The idea of oil doesn't necessarily mean anything. It could be 10 people. He just chose these young women who would normally be going to a wedding party. So that's why he picked these things out of everything that he could have discussed. That's why he chose these things, was because it would have meant something to them. But we do have to look at the idea of how are we prepared. See, that whole idea, when he talks about being prepared for the coming of the Lord, it doesn't mean that we sit on a mountaintop with a pair of binoculars. Okay, that's not what he's talking about, looking forward to and preparing for it. How do we prepare for the coming of the Lord? Even today, how do we prepare? How do we prepare for the coming of the Lord? How do we prepare for the second coming of the Lord? Okay, we do what we're supposed to do as Christians. We are faithful in our worship of the Lord, right? We're faithful in it. We don't allow something else to pull us away from that. Certainly so. Okay, that idea. Do you think about how he says that they said these women had to go somewhere else to get their oil? Go to the cellar and buy some more oil. So it's talking about these young women have been pulled away from where they needed to be and where they were supposed to be. So we look at the cares of the world. Do the cares of the world pull us away? Does the lure and the allure of the world and all of its, spectacle, does it pull us away from where we're supposed to be? Or do we prepare and make ourselves ready so that when it's coming, we're not caught out? We're not somewhere else where we're not supposed to be. We are exactly where we're supposed to be. Yes. Okay. All right. Preparation, preparedness, in everything we do. We have when it says that we're supposed to meditate on the word of the Lord, that's supposed to be always on our mind. It doesn't mean 300, our 60 minutes out of the hour we're walking around reciting Bible verses. That's not necessarily what it's talking about. We have to live in the world and we have to do the things that are necessary in the world. It means that the things of God take precedence. Everything of God takes precedence over anything that we have, anything else we have to do. Okay? We don't allow anything to pull us away. We don't want to have to go somewhere else to get our oil when we were supposed to be sitting there waiting on the bridegroom to come. And it's just been talking about a spiritual sense. Worship, prayer, meditation. For a lot of folks, fasting would have been a portion of their service. The idea of getting rid of the external things and focusing. Prayer with our fasting with prayer. That kind of thing. Everything, though, was the idea of remaining prepared. And not only that, knowing that Jesus is coming back. And we don't know when it is. So to not let down our guard certainly is a portion of that. So the whole point of this is to show that we as Christians need to continually be prepared for the eventuality of Christ's return. That He is coming back. There's nothing to be done with that other than to remain where we need to be. Remain where, not proximity, but spiritually wise, where we need to be. Okay? There would be the most horrible thing to have become a New Testament Christian, and then when Christ comes back for us to have left our first love and to be back in the world. Can you imagine that? I mean, that would be just the most... And you know, we often think, oh, I've got plenty of time. I have plenty of time to come back. I have plenty of time to come back. I can always make amends. I can always return. And we make excuses about why we haven't. I need to get my life right, and then I'll start coming back to church. And saying that church attendance is what makes us faithful in the first place. It marks a faithful person, but it certainly doesn't make us faithful simply by being in the pew. But it means that we don't let anything pull us away. We are where we need to be, and we remain where we need to be. We're steadfast. We stay fast in one place. Okay, don't allow things to pull us away. Okay. But he even makes reference to this in verse 13. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man is coming. And this is talking about his second coming, because he is already there. So when he talks about he is coming, it is that idea that he will come again. He will return. He's already been here once, and he's going to come back. He will not come to this earth. He will be in the air. We will all see him, and we'll leave this place and go to him. He's not coming back to us. He will appear in the air, and we will every eye will see him, and every knee will bow. And he's telling us that, warning us of that. So, but the good thing about it is those who were prepared, where did they get to go? They got to go inside, and they got to participate in this beautiful feast that had been set up for this bridegroom and his bride, and it was a beautiful thing. And all these women who had come there wanting to be a participant, 5 of them got to go inside. And I think sometimes we talk about those who were excluded, but you think about the 5 who were prepared. They got to go in, and then the door was shut. They didn't have to worry about anything. They were under the protection of their host, and they got to enjoy all of the feast and all of the festivities. And, you know, weddings for the most part are pretty great things. They're pretty fun. They're exciting. You know, you get to see people start their life together, and for the most part, unless people get drunk and act foolishly, for the most part, it's a pretty enjoyable thing. So, you know, this is where the women who were prepared, they went in, and the door shut. Oh, everybody's going to see him. Yeah, he's going to appear to all nations, and for those of us who are prepared, it's going to be magnificent. It's going to be, here he comes, because I know that because I'm faithful, this is going to be transformed into that. But then those who are not faithful, it is a terrible, terrible, terrible. It's going to be a cause for sinking to their knees and burying their head in their hands and moaning and weeping and wailing, because they know that their future is set at that moment. When that physical body is gone, opportunity for repentance and baptism is gone as well. You can't baptize an uncorporeal body. So, yeah. Yeah. The one that they would not confess is not going to confess them. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. 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 Yeah. Yeah. He was kind of fumbling around about it, hitting everything but beating around the bush, so to speak. Wasn't doing. Yeah. The idea of preparedness is good for all. I mean, it's, you know, it is certainly especially important in our Christian lives, but being prepared is a good idea anyway, isn't it? Right? You think about, you drive around without a spare tire in your trunk. Are you kind of courting disaster? Yeah, you can be. Now some of us have a service. You call somebody and they come and they do everything like that. But even when they get there, guess what they're going to be looking for in the trunk? They're going to be looking for your spare tire. How many people have one key to their car? One key. There's one. I had one. I bought a car. I had one key. Guess what I did? I went and made another one, and guess where actually, I made two. One is in the truck, and one of them's at the house, because you get locked out. And what do you have to do? You have to pay somebody to come and open your car. The idea of preparedness is a good one for all of us. I mean, it's just in general, just for general living, being prepared is a good idea. If you're gonna bake a cake, do you start mixing everything before you get all the ingredients out, or do you get one ingredient out, put it in there, go get the other ingredient out, put it in there, and go get the other ingredient? What if you get to one ingredient and you look in that pantry and you don't have any XYZ, whatever it might be? You kind of wish you had taken everything out and taken stock of your stuff before you had started putting it all together. Yeah, absolutely. But in every aspect of our lives, preparedness. So why would we shirk or shortchange our preparation in regards to our spiritual lives? But we do that sometimes. We let this go. We let this go. We let this go, and we're not prepared. We're really not. I'm not one of those people that says that everybody. It says that it's given to some to be evangelists, some to be prophets, some to be apostles, and everybody has their own thing. But how many people are prepared to have a Bible study with someone? A genuine Bible study. They say, I want to come to your house. I want to study the Bible with you. Are you prepared to have a Bible study with them? Do you know what you need to know? Can you give them book, chapter, and verse for what we believe? Well, that's part of being prepared. We need to be prepared to share the gospel. And if we're not, then we're not really that prepared. We need to be. Okay? So that's the idea. That's the concept. But then Jesus, as he's continuing on with this, now he segues into another, and this one also talks about the idea of preparedness, but it also talks about the idea of opportunity. It's one thing to be prepared, and it's another thing to take advantage of an opportunity when it presents itself, right? All right. It also talks about the idea of reward, the concept of reward for taking an opportunity. Okay, so let's look at this. In verse 14, parable of the talents. Like I said, everybody who here has not talked about the parable of the talents in their lifetime. Everybody has. So I'm hoping maybe you got some insight. Shoot it out there for me. For the kingdom of heaven is like a man traveling to a far country, who calls his own servants and delivered his goods to them. So here's a fellow that's taking advantage of an opportunity, right? He's prepared, and he's taking advantage of an opportunity. When he goes away, we don't know what his purpose was for going to the far country. But it is evident that he did not want things to come to a grinding standstill while he was gone. Everybody just hang tight, I'll be back. Travel back then was not the same as travel today. You might go to a far country and you might be gone a year. You might be gone even longer than that. You just don't know. We don't know why he was taken away, but he did not want things to grind to a halt in his absence. So he takes an opportunity. Right? He takes advantage of his preparation, and he prepares them by doing what? So he calls his servants and he gives them his goods, whatever they may be. So to one he gives what? 5 talents. And to another he gives 2 talents. And to the other one he gives, but look at what he says. He gives it to them each according to his ability. All right. So he saw something in his servants and he gave it to them according to their ability. But he gave each of them something. Each of them had something. Not one of those servants walked away and said, well, my master doesn't have much of trust in me or faith in me. He didn't give me anything. Every one of them got something, and they each got something commensurate with what they were able to do with it. So he gives one 5 talents. So then he immediately goes on this journey. And what does the man with the 5 talents do? He went and traded with them and did what? Okay, so he took advantage of this opportunity. He prepared himself and he took advantage of an opportunity. Okay, now let's think about this. Let's bring it forward a little bit. Let's talk about ourselves. How many people here have been given 5 talents? I don't know. I mean, that idea, how do you bring that forward and say, well, I've gotten this talent, I've got this. I would say each of us has at least 5 talents, but that's not really the kind of talents we're talking about. He's talking about the idea of talents as talents of gold or talents of some sort of currency. But he gives them these 5 talents. But what was he expecting them to do with that? Manage it, do something with it, accomplish something. He gave him something that he was capable of handling, and what did he do? He immediately went and he justified his master's faith in him. Yeah, we have to assume that the master, of course, is meaning Christ, and this idea that he's given these servants talents that we can be seen into fairly easily by someone of divine providence, because he sees into us, he knows what we're capable of doing. And we'll get into it in a minute, but I believe that's why the man with the one talent was so disappointing to him, because he knew he was capable of more. He wouldn't have given them the talent if he'd not been capable. But he gave it to them according to what they were able to do with it. But the man with the 5 went and gained 5 more. Now he walks, now he can stand justified before his master. He's justified his master's faith and confidence in him. That's a good thing. I'd like to be able to stand before Christ justified in his faith in me. He's given me something to do. All right, so likewise, he had received 2, gained what? So what had he done? He had gone out and he had used his opportunity, he had used his blessing, and he had used his preparation to gain 2 more talents. Once again, he had justified his master's faith and confidence in him. Absolutely. But he who had received 1 went and what? Buried it in the ground, dug in the ground, and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, once again, it gets back to the idea of this master was not gone for a weekend. This is a long period of time. So this man didn't gain 5 talents simply because he went out and within a couple of hours had gained 5 more talents. It might have taken him a month, 2 months, 3 months. So what did it require? Ongoing effort. Ongoing effort. Continual. He could have, as the master said about the man with the 1 talent, he could have gone and given it to the money changers and gotten a little bit, tiny little bit. It was a fraction interest. But that's not what he did. He went and actively traded and worked and proceeded to amass another 5 talent fortune, which was no small thing. Same thing with the man with the 2. After a long period of time, he had gotten 2. He had worked. This is not something that was done in a short period of time. It was a long time, a long ongoing effort, which tells us what? We have a lifetime to return back to our master something that will justify his faith and confidence in us. All right? So after a long time, the Lord of those servants came and settled accounts with him. So he who had received 5 came, of course, brought his 5 talents. It's the Lord, you gave me 5 talents. And look, I have gained 5 more talents beside them. What does his Lord say? Well done. Good job. In essence, you've done exactly what I thought you would do, what I knew in my heart that you were capable of doing. You have not disappointed me. Now, let me ask you this. Had that person had 5 talents, and he had come back, his master had come back and he said, Master, you gave me 5 talents. I have gotten 2 talents. What would his master have said? Well done. You've done something with them. You've accomplished something. I've delivered you something. I had faith in you. I had trust in you. You've brought back 2 talents. Fantastic. You've justified my faith and confidence in you. Same thing with the 2-talent man. Had he come back and he said, Master, you've given me 2. I've gained you a talent besides that. What would his master have said? Well done. You've accomplished something. You've been busy. You've worked. What if the master had come back and he had given the man 2 talents, but he said, Master, you gave me 2 talents, and I went and I worked and I worked and I worked, and I've lost one of those talents. Circumstances were not good, and I didn't, and here's 1 talent back. What would the master have said? You worked. You did something. You tried to accomplish something. You at least were busy doing what I asked you to do. You were busy with my goods trying to get something accomplished. But at the end, he says, Then he who had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man. So immediately, this man with the 1 talent is doing what? He's already begun to make excuses for what he's not done, what he's failed to accomplish. He said, and look how he does this. He puts the blame back on the master. He didn't say, I'm a lazy man. You knew I was a lazy man. You knew that I probably wasn't going to do anything. You gave me the one talent, so hey, here's my one talent back. He immediately begins basically assigning blame to the master. He says, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And I was afraid. And I went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours. Yeah, I think basically he's saying you don't do anything for yourself. Anything that is yours has been accomplished by others. You know, you're not doing it. You didn't do anything, so I'm not doing anything. Here's yours back. You know, I look at this, and you could honestly look and you could say I was afraid, but I think in this instance you can almost say I was arrogant, because there's a bit of arrogance to this as well. As if the man could stand justified before his master with that kind of an excuse, having done nothing. There's an arrogance there as much as there is the idea of being afraid. Either one of those is not an excuse, but the idea of standing before God in arrogance, is anyone going to be able to stand before God arrogantly? No, you're not going to stand before the maker of the universe and all of his power and glory and stand arrogantly to his face and withstand him to his face. It can't be done. But here he is. Here's your talent back. You gave it to me. I'm giving it back to you. I'm giving it to you exactly as you gave it to me, which really doesn't fall in line with common sense. If he was afraid of his master, what would he have done? Everything in his power to keep from being a disappointment. You know, here, I tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and give my talent to this guy, and I'm out of here, because I don't know what he's going to do to me when But remember, he had already determined to do this. He had already determined to, because it says he immediately went and he dug in the ground and hid it. So he had no intention of working with what had been given to him. He was just trying to bide his time. Maybe this master wouldn't come back. That happens. You know, maybe he went and died in a foreign land. Maybe he was fighting. Maybe, who knows? You know, we're not guaranteed anything. Maybe he was hoping he wouldn't come back and have to give an account for what he had done. Don't know. But this was a pretty poor attempt. And to throw it back on the one who had seen something enough in him to at least given him one talent. You know, he could have given him nothing, but he saw something in him that saw that he was capable, which tells us what? That we're all capable. The Lord has given all of us something. You know, here we're talking about amounts of money, but in our own lives, we're talking about the ability to accomplish something for our Master. And it is going to be a sad thing when there are going to be people who are going to stand before God and say, I did nothing. I did nothing, really. You know, I was worried what people might say. I was worried what people might do. I was worried about persecution. I was fearful for my life, my job, my safety, all of these things. And you know, you gave me. Here I am. This is all it's going to be but there are people who are going to honestly attempt to do that before God Almighty. And we see what happens. Now let's go back just a little bit. In verse 21, so we've got the three. They're giving their accounts for what's happened. They're giving their accounts for what's going on. But look at verse 21. After this man says, "You give me 5 talents. I'm giving you back the 5 talents." He says, "Well done, good and faithful servant. What? You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things." So, was the work that he did, was the effort that he put into gaining these 5 talents back, was it repaid? Oh, many times over. He said, "This is a few." So it gives us a kind of an indication. He said he's considering 10 talents a small amount. He says, I gave you charge over 5 talents. That's nothing. I'm going to make you ruler over many things. So when the master says this is small time, I'm going to make you in charge of the idea of reward here. Remember, we're not looking to assign a value to everything. What he's saying here is that the reward that we're going to receive for the small work that we do here, as hard as it is, in the grand scheme of things, when you compare it and contrast it, at the end of the day, everything that we have here is going to be small. It's I hate to use the word chump change compared to what we're going to be rulers over. We're going to be given a crown of life. I mean, is that I'd say that's pretty impressive. But this is small. I'm going to make you charge over many, many things. All right? Look at this. The man who had the 2 talents said the same thing. 23, his Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. Faithful in what? I trusted you with. I entrusted you your account. I charged you with. That's the reason he gave him. He didn't say, hey, take this 5 talents and just hang on to it for me while I'm gone. He gave him his goods so that he would do something with them. So he was faithful. He was good in that he did what his master told him. And he was faithful in that he lived up to what his master believed him capable of doing. He was faithful in that. He says, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things, this 2 talents. Now, a talent, remember we talked about talents before. Talent was not an insubstantial sum of money. It was a large sum of money. A talent was a large sum, and this man had 2 in his care. He says, you have been faithful over a few things, these 2 talents that you thought were so big, that's nothing compared. And it could be that the master was far wealthier than we imagined, that the 2 talents was just a test to see what they were capable of doing. Here's 2 talents. You thought that was a lot. You haven't seen anything yet. What I'm going to make you ruler over is it dwarfs what we're talking about here. He says, you have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. So this man's about to receive a reward for being faithful in what he's been entrusted with. And it's going to be far greater than the 2 talents. So these men are about to be elevated to a pretty substantial position. And we've seen that in the past, right? In scriptures where you have somebody who was a little bit and was elevated to a high position. Remember Joseph? He was over the household of Potiphar, which was no small thing. I mean, Potiphar was a pretty prominent person, but then he went from being faithful over a few things to what? Being second in command over the entire kingdom. So this is not out of the realm of possibility. We've seen this before in Scripture, and we've seen it. We're going to see it again if we remain faithful over the few things that God's entrusted us with. Now, let's compare that and contrast that with verse 26. Here's the man. He has 1 talent. He had the capacity. He had the capability. He wouldn't have been given the talent. But what does he do with it? He goes and hides it in the ground. Then when his master comes back, he says, I'm going to give you back exactly what you gave me. Nothing more, nothing. I may not have gained anything, but I didn't lose anything. But the master doesn't see it that way, does he? That's not what he was after. He said, but his Lord answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant. So he calls him out on it. You know, all of his excuses don't mean anything because the master knows, the master sees. He says, you wicked and lazy servant, you've done nothing. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered. And so you ought to have at least deposited my money with the bankers. And at my coming, I would have received my back own, at least with interest. So that tells us what? The man still had, he went either or, right? I can either go and I can lose it, or I can give it back to him. But the master said, you still could have done something with it. You know, I would have been disappointed, but at least you would have given me back, I would have received back what I gave you, and I would have at least received some interest. So no matter what it is, there's still ability there no matter what. We still can do something. So, but that's what you should have done. So what does he say to do? Take that talent and give it to the one who has 10. The first man who had 5 talents gained another 5. Now he's got another 1. Now this man's starting to see some, he said he's going to make you lord over many things. This is what's happening. This is the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to receive what this fellow had. Now, before we start looking at this and saying, okay, what does the talent mean? What does it mean that one who has this is going to receive more? That's when we start assigning values that aren't supposed to be assigned. That's not the point behind it. The point behind it is this. God has given us abilities. He tells us to do something with them. And when we stand before God and we have not used those talents, those abilities to do what we are supposed to do, we will be accused and we will stand convicted before God. The master had utmost control over that servant. And he pronounced judgment on him. He said, you are lazy and you're wicked. And he says, take the talent away from him, give it to the one who has 10. For to everyone who has, more will be given. And he who has, he will have abundance, but from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. Now, look at verse 30. He pronounces judgment, or sentence, I should say. He's already pronounced wicked and slothful. But what does he say? What's going to happen to him? Cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. That outer darkness, we've seen that referred to several times. What does it mean? We're not in proximity to God. We will not have proximity to God. We will not have contact with God. If we stand condemned before God, when we are brought to account, we stand condemned before God, the worst thing that can happen to us, no matter what hell is comprised of, no matter what eternal punishment is comprised of, we know it's not going to be pleasant. Okay, it's going to be a horrible place to be. The worst part of it is the fact that we will no longer be in proximity to God. None. And think about how horrible that is. One of the great things about the life in which we live, we still have, while we don't see him, we have an intermediary that he goes before God on our behalf. We still have proximity to God even now. But when that time comes, we are utterly and 100% totally cut off from God for eternity. That should scare the living daylights out of us if we are in sin. That's one of the good things about having our ability to process things. We should be scared to die outside of God. To petrify us. Because this is what's going to happen to this servant. Everything that he has, everything that meant anything is going to be taken away, and he is going to be cast out. And we just look at that for ourselves. If we are found wanting in the scales, we will be cast out, and there's nothing that can be done about it. It'd be like the parable of the virgins. That door shut, there is no entry. That idea of we have all opportunity. Every single one of us has opportunity, and it presents itself to us in different ways. Some people are given the opportunity to preach. Some people are given the opportunity to teach. Some people are given the opportunity to be elders in the Lord's church. Some people are given opportunities to be deacons in the Lord's church. Some people are given opportunities, and we're not going to get into this one today, but if you remember what he says, he says, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you visited me. All of these things, we all have an opportunity to engage in works on the Lord's behalf. And heaven help the one, well, heaven can't help the one, that stands before God having done none of those things. Because we see Christ tells them what's going to happen to the people who do not do those things. So we all have an opportunity. The question is, are we taking advantage of the opportunity? And that's really what it comes down to. So how many people have 5 talents? How many people here have 5 talents? How many people here have 2 talents? How many people here have 1 talent? Hey, listen, he gave you according to your ability. If you got the 1 talent, are you at least using the 1 talent? That's the question. It's not a matter of how much or how many. I'll be honest with you, people who can preach, I appreciate it. I appreciate preachers. I love preachers. But let me tell you, a lady who can prepare a meal for someone in her kitchen and carry it to someone who is having issues and having troubles, that's as much of a sermon as anything I'm going to hear on a Sunday morning. What we do in the name of the Lord, and it all avails. It all does something. So the idea of working in the kingdom is not relegated to somebody standing up here on Sunday morning. Everybody has a capability, and everybody has a capacity. Everybody has a talent. So the question is, what is our talent, and are we using it at the end of the day? That's all I got. Anybody got anything they want to say? Yep. Uh-huh. Yep. Mm-hmm. Right.
Doesn't make any difference how you talent.
Yeah, it's irrelevant. Yeah, it's irrelevant. The whole point of enumerating 5 and 2 and 1 is simply because the Lord has blessed people with what He believes what He knows they're capable of doing. He gives some people an ability, and really remember this: Christ is saying these words. So if we think about this in terms of the first century church, remember it was given to some people had multiple gifts of the Holy Spirit. Some people had one. Okay? But everyone had something. What are you doing with it? What are you doing with it? And it doesn't matter if I've got 5 or if I've got 2, if I've got 1. If I've taken what the Lord's blessed me with and I'm doing it, then I'm doing the will of the Lord. I can stand before Him and justify His expectations of me. But if I stand before Him and I said, well, I really didn't do anything, that's not going to fly. I'm going to be held accountable for that. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
One was using their talent. They knew they were going to have that oil.
He goes straight from the idea of being prepared to taking advantage when you have taken advantage of an opportunity when it presents itself. It all goes into the Christian living. Every bit of it is Christian living 101. Actually. Yes, sir.
What would you think of a father? He has 3 sons. 2 sons were very productive.
Mm-hmm.
The 3rd son wasted his money. His daddy was always getting out of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Kept him up.
Mm-hmm.
But when he died, he left 2 sons. He didn't leave his 3rd son.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote in the will that if he left it in his hand, just throw it away anyway.
I understand that completely. I do.
Do you blame him?
No. How can you blame something like that? That's you think about look at what the man says. He says, "I'm going away on a long journey." You can take that to mean death. I'm not saying that that's what it means. I'm saying that you certainly could look at it. It's like, look, I'm going to leave this place, and I have this. I know that these 2 they're going to use it in a productive way. I know that they're going to, whatever it might be. And to exclude the 3rd one, would I necessarily do it? I can't say that I necessarily would, but I can certainly understand not wanting. It's like saying I have 2 sons that are completely productive, and the 3rd one is a heroin addict. So I'm going to leave him about $100,000. Well, unless that $100,000 is going into a trust to get him out of heroin, guess what he's going to do with it? Every bit of it's going to go into his veins. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, how many people here have been in a situation where someone comes and asks, is on the street and they're begging for money? And, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to render good unto all men. But when you see someone, and sometimes it's how we do it. Say, I'm not going to give you $20 in cash. He said, but if you come down here, we're going to go down to the store right here, and we'll get you a loaf of bread, and we'll get you some peanut butter and some jelly, and we'll get you something to drink, and you can take that with you, and guess what? You're going to eat. But I'm not going to give you $20 because that $20 might just end up, and it likely will, end up down here at such and such package store and going down and getting you drunk, and I don't want to be responsible for that. And I shouldn't be responsible for that. I should not be made to feel obligated to buy you liquor. But I'm going to do good to you. I'm going to find something good to do to you. I'm going to go down there. I'm going to buy you some food. So guess what? You're going to walk away from it. You're going to be able to eat for the next 2 or 3 days. So it's the idea here is that of course we take advantage of the opportunity where it presents itself, but we have to be good stewards. The 2 men were very good stewards, obviously. The 3rd man, even if he said. Yeah, I think we give short change to that idea. Is that even if you had taken it and given it to the bankers, I would have at least received interest. You wouldn't stand condemned. I wouldn't be condemning you right now, but because you did absolutely nothing, I'm going to take it away from you and give it to the other one. And you're wicked and unprofitable. Wicked, I think, because he defamed his own master in defending his decision in doing what he did. He defamed his own master. you're a hard man, and you gather where you haven't sown, and you reap where you haven't planted, and I was afraid. You made me afraid, so I didn't do anything. I mean, to stand there and cast aspersions on the master because you're wicked and unprofitable? How dare you? How dare you? But listen, there are folks today that they won't be able to do that, but that's essentially what they're doing when they stand before God. And that's what's going to happen. But we have to be good stewards. And every single one of us has a talent. I don't care what anybody says. Everybody has a talent. Oh, yeah. Yeah. How many men have you seen are fantastic speakers? Unfortunately, they speak untruth. But they're fantastic speakers. And they have a command of the Scripture. They're just very judicious in how they exclude certain portions of it. Yeah, they have a great talent. Unfortunately, it's not being used in the service of the Lord. Matter of fact, it's working against it. Anything else? Good discussion. Get you out. We can get home. All right. Glad to have everybody here this afternoon. We are going to offer an extended invitation if there's anyone here who needs to respond to the invitation, whatever the need might be. We want to pray for you. We want to pray with you. Take care of any need that you might have as we come and sing.